90.7 KPFK, Los Angeles.
Rethinking Heroes, Life After the Military.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
Wow, I mean, first of all, what a question.
Journalism is about telling the truth, all while ferreting out the bottom line.
I'm a Harrison Hellraiser.
Uh-oh. With me, Cary Harrison, as your guide.
Rethinking Heroes, Life After the Military with Cary Harrison.
And it is the top of the hour. Cary Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. And on this special pledge drive for KPFK, we're going to be bringing you a couple of let me tell you, a very extraordinary voice, but I'm not going to tell you who that is, not for another 23 seconds probably. But you're going to hear also from a 27-year CIA analyst, Ray McGovern, a name familiar to many of you, who is going to talk about the morality of whistleblowing and why it is actually defending the Constitution and doing the right thing, and some of the stuff that he has done that is going to open your eyes, stuff you've never heard before. And we often save these moments for special occasions like this.
I learned professionally that the whole reason for NATO was to keep the Russians out, to keep the Americans in, and keep the Germans down. Keep them divided.
Yeah.
So I was scared out of my...
Right now, my favorite superhero in the mix, in the pantheon of wonderful heroes, is Greg Palast. We all know him from Democracy Now!, from BBC, from Rolling Stone, from the variety of films he's done back since the beginning of when documentaries became cool. He's one of the reasons they did. His most recent documentary is called Vigilante, and it is only available, let me just underscore only, put it in bold, make it cursive, and say only available on Pacifica right now. It is not available anywhere else on earth, any platform, anywhere you like, only here right now for $100 pledge. And you're going to get to see that. But first, let me welcome you, Greg Palast, in a slot where we often hear you during the Thom Hartmann Show, Monday through Friday. We also hear you on Democracy Now! We hear you on Flashpoints with Dennis Bernstein in afternoons in the 5 o'clock hour.
Yes, and nice little radio station you have here. It would be a shame if something terrible were to happen to it. Actually, guys, something terrible is happening to it. It's under the gun. The wolf is not at the door here. He's sitting at my keyboard as we speak, writing out the KPFK death knell. Now, I know we've danced around. We've done some moonwalking around the grave's edge. This is really, we're slipping though. And what's happening is a full-scale attack on progressive media and a whole program to discredit KPFK, Democracy Now!, Thom Hartmann, Flashpoints, of course, the wonderful Cary Harrison, where you're hearing stuff you won't hear anywhere else. Come on, you know that. Yeah, you hear crazy stuff. You want to say, who the heck is that they just put on some fruitcake? Yeah. But you know what else we have? The real hardcore news you just don't get anywhere else. Now, one of the things I did is I did a film. It's produced by Martin Sheen, my favorite president after FDR, President Bartlett, and Maria Florio, who won the Academy Award for Best Documentary, Steve Nemeth, Rhino Films, and George DiCaprio. And thank the DiCaprio family for supporting this film. But here's one thing. We are not making this available right now anywhere on the planet. You can't get it. You can't go to Amazon and buy a disc. You can't go to Netflix and stream it. None of that, because we haven't released it yet. But we are. We've been given a dispensation from our contracts to make a special set of discs just for Pacifica listeners. No, that's it. So if you are listening to this broadcast, you have one of the only chances to get this film, which gets to the right heart and soul of issue number one in America, how they are ripping off our elections by attacking black voters. And this vigilante film, I'm telling you, you're going to laugh at the front, you're going to cry at the end, and if you don't laugh and cry, I'll pay for your therapy. How about that? But what I want you to do is make $100 minimum donation.
My therapy is very expensive, Greg, just so you know.
Or maybe a massage.
But I did laugh and cry, so you're off the hook.
I'm off the hook. I don't have to pay. So the way to get this film, and the only way to get it is by calling this number, which is 818-985-5735. Now, I'm an investigative reporter. Those who know Greg Palast know I'm an investigative reporter. So I'm going to guess that 818-985, the last four numbers are KPFK. So 818-985-KPFK, or you can go to kpfk.org, and where it says donate button, it's a little complicated. It's a little like Chutes and Ladders, but, give it a break. And if you type in Palast in the donation box or Vigilante, you'll get to that DVD. And it's narrated, by the way, by the wonderful Rosario Dawson. Again, the only way to get it is by calling 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, or go to kpfk.org. And
it's a $100 pledge. That's it. You get a DVD that is not available, a movie that is not available anywhere on the planet whatsoever, except right here, right now. And you get a copy of it well before it's publicly released through a special dispensation, as Greg Palast pointed out, so that this can be available and support the station that you love. Support the station that offers free speech unbridled. We are now hearing reports of public broadcasting stations in places like West Virginia, where people are getting fired because politicians are trying to defund it. Governors are sweeping in and erasing stories because people should not be allowed to tell those stories. Not here. We have the backing of you, the listener. We get to tell you the truth as we are able to determine it, as Greg Palast has been for years with this movie Vigilante, where we actually learn about the governor of Georgia in ways, shall we say, that would not be as sexy for his election prospects.
Now, here's the deal, Cary. The full title of the film is Vigilante, Georgia's Vote Suppression Hitman. You say, well, what the hell do I care about the Peachtree State? The answer is because that's the test kitchen for the Jim Crow attack on black voters. Whatever happens in Georgia spreads out. So, for example, this vigilante process, which I'm going to tell you about in a second, these vigilantes are now spreading out to Texas, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida, Alabama. We are under attack, democracy under attack. And this is what the film says. So one of the first things is we have here in Southern California, one of the U.S. militaries. We're talking about heroes, the heroes you don't know about. Here's a hero. His name is Gamaliel Turner, Major Gamaliel Turner. Mm-hmm. And he is the military's expert on warfare of the future. And in fact, has been designing a special anti-tank weapon for Ukraine. He's an African-American one of our top military men, but he is African-American. And that means that his vote was blocked in Georgia. Okay, so this man was sent by, Major Turner was sent by the President of the United States, to California, to Port Hueneme there. And he was challenged as not being a Georgian, not being an American. Can you imagine?
Let's point out why. He left the state, as one does on an airplane, even if you're on a vacation. If you leave the state on a vacation, you're no longer a resident of that state, and you can't vote.
Well, if you are in the military, believe it or not, you don't lose your vote when you're assigned somewhere else. You get something called an absentee ballot, and they would not give him his absentee ballot. Now, if it were just him, I'd say, hey, okay, well, that's maybe one mistake. But here's the deal. They have challenged. He's one of 849,000 voters that were challenged. And Reverend Warnock just won his reelection by less than 100,000 votes. That and other tactics, which you'll learn about in this film. But I want to give you a sense of the film. So who are these vigilantes who are challenging Major Turner and the others? Well, you'll meet the guy who challenged the major. He dresses up like a vigilante, like Doc Holliday. He really does like to portray Doc Holliday. Why? That's his hero, this what he thinks is a real vigilante. He showed up to the interview. Because we said, if you want to dress like Doc Holliday, we'd love that. We'd like you go right ahead. That's what you do. You can dress up any way you want. He's a cross-dresser. He dresses up as a murderer, racist. By the way, just so you know, he was very proud of the fact that Doc Holliday shot 4 young black soldiers in cold blood after the Civil War in a watering hole. So this is the guy who challenged Major Turner. You'll hear him talk about his and then you'll hear Major Turner after you hear the introduction by Rosario Dawson. This is from the film Vigilante, Georgia's Vote Suppression Hitman. Let her rip.
Right now, I'm the chairman of the Columbus-Muskogee Republican Party. So I'm pretty involved in that, which I think is the right. Let's see, that would be the right way to be, and also I'm on the right.
Apparently, you had filed some challenges to 4,000 voters.
Yes.
No ballot. No ballot in the mail. Called to register. And the announcement there was, Mr. Turner, you have been challenged.
Major Gamaliel Turner is the military's expert on warfare of the future.
I project weapons and capabilities out to the future. You know, for me, it's all about the survival of the soldier.
Assigned to Port Hueneme in California.
So you're telling me 2,600 miles away, 2 days or 3 days before an election, that if I want to vote, all I have to do is show up and prove as an American citizen that I have the right to vote again? You talk to fools like that. You talk to fools like that. I'm not a fool.
Okay. So that was Major Gamaliel Turner from the film Vigilante, Georgia's Vote Suppression Hitman. And the only way to get that film, there's some tough scenes in there, though the Vigilante, he really was wearing a loaded 6-gun. So I didn't want to get too crafty.
You're choked up right now as I look at you, Greg Palast, and you've seen this probably 20 million times, as you do when you make a movie, edit it, produce it, direct it, etc.
If this doesn't move you, then don't talk to me. And if the Vigilante doesn't make you laugh, even though he's actually, this guy personally has challenged 4,000 voters. But I want you to get this in the way you can get it, because you get two things when you get this film. You not only get an amazing story that no one else would tell. It's not in the lamestream media. This is unique reporting. Now, I was doing these, I do my reports. Oh, I'm mainstream in Canada, the UK, Europe, Central America, you name it. I was a
220 volt countries.
Yes. So basically, I worked for BBC Television, The Guardian newspapers, Al Jazeera, Rolling Stone. But you won't get this anywhere but by calling this number 818-985-5735. 818-985-KPFK. 818-985-KPFK. Make that $100 donation. Better for the station than for the drone rangers out there. It's tax deductible gift. You know why? I'm not going to charge anything to the station. I'm going to donate the discs. Usually I charge at least the cost of producing them. I'm making a personal donation. So if you make this donation right now, I'll give you the disc. Together we support the station. And by the way, I've not only talked the talk, I've walked the walk. I've given in cash thousands. I've given my last 2 cars to the station. I've done everything but giving my pair of pants because, I don't want to get busted in the 7-Eleven. So I walked the walk. Join me. 818-985-5735. Get a copy of
818-985-KPFK, in case the numbers are complicated. 818-985-KPFK. We're talking to Greg Palast, Cary Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes. You could see Greg Palast and hear Greg Palast, certainly all across KPFK. He's on Flashpoints with Dennis Bernstein, on in the 5 o'clock hour. He's on with Tom here Monday through Friday, interstitially, intermittently. He's on Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. And then, of course, he's on BBC. He's on The Guardian, in Rolling Stone. Keystone and all across the world ubiquitously, and absent across many U.S. mainstream sources because, well, he's dangerous. That's what happens when you tell the truth. They say, shut up, Greg, shut up. So that's why it's necessary to have him here, where we reach millions and millions of people, different from many of those cable stations that literally reach 100,000. So our reach is bigger, badder, broader, and we have a DVD that talks about election suppression, as they like to say, and how it is affecting people in Georgia and then affecting people all across America. Yes, largely black people, but if you're a people, you may as well be a black person soon, because you're next on that hit list. And if you're in the military, and you're getting cut out in the military, this crosses 4 more lines.
Well, actually, what I found also in my investigations, again, only reported in The Guardian, on BBC, and Pacifica, was a systematic attack. It was a system called caging, which I uncovered. And I was able to report that on Dennis Bernstein's Flashpoints, which you can hear at 5 p.m. I reported at the top of the BBC Nightly News. It was nowhere else in America. The story that the GOP was sending letters. You'll love this, Cary. Talk to your military people about this. They were sending letters to black and Hispanic soldiers out of the Jacksonville Air Base who were sent over to Iraq and Afghanistan and Germany. And it said, do not forward. When those letters came back, they said, oh, they don't live at their registration address. Well, of course not. They're soldiers, again, just like Gamaliel Turner, who were sent out. And they blocked those people from voting, this massive, ugly caging business. And I have to say that based on the Pacifica reports and Democracy Now! Reports and the Hartman and Flashpoints reports, at that time, Senator Teddy Kennedy and Senator Cary put in a bill to stop and kill this caging trick, which cost nearly 1 million votes. And frankly, as far as I could see, probably cost John Cary his election. But we're not allowed to talk about that on anywhere but the Pacifica Radio Network. These are factual matters. I don't just make up this stuff. I have the lists. We actually got the list of all the people that were challenged by the vigilantes. We have their names and addresses. This is just the beginning of Brian Kemp. Now, the important thing, now you say, what do I care about Brian Kemp? Again, whatever they do in Georgia goes nationwide, but now it's getting more serious. He's the guy that smeared, defamed, and thereby beat Stacey Abrams. And many people know that my team that did this film also worked for Stacey Abrams' organization, Fair Fight Georgia, when she wasn't a candidate. We drop out of that as soon as anyone gets political. But Brian Kemp is the new love child of the Wall Street Journal. They want him to be president. And they are pushing him hard because they know that Trump is dead on arrival and DeSantis is too off the spectrum scale to permit near the button. So the establishment Republicans over at the Wall Street Journal are trying to give us Brian Kemp as president. Look out. And also at the least to set him up to run against the great progressive Senator Jon Ossoff in Georgia. Because he's term limited as a governor. So you want to find out not only about the real story of voting in America, but you want to find out about the guy that they want to make your president, whether you want it or not. So call 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, and say, I want that Vigilante film by Greg Palast. Make that call or go to kpfk.org and then hit that donate button on the homepage, and it'll take you to a place where it says, choose premiums or gifts. And by the way, if you already have Vigilante, well, one, get another. If you already have 2, then there's all kinds of good stuff. Mugs, T-shirts, we can cover you head to toe. Everything but clown makeup is on there. And so please, you have all kinds of choice. I really do. By the way, some people say, don't bother with the gift. No, I actually want you to see the film and get this out because I'm not allowed to put this out for streaming. I'm not allowed to sell these DVDs. The only way you can get it, I got this special agreement from these wonderful producers. We've got Martin Sheen and George DiCaprio. So I really want you to get that film, get it around. $100 minimum donation for KPFK. Go to kpfk.org or call 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Terry is standing by the phone, and I got to tell you that I'm not getting paid for this. Terry's not getting paid for this. We're volunteering. Will you join us?
Thank you so much. And that's Greg Palast, and he's right. Will you join us? We just have another joiner. We have a matching pledge that just came in from Let's Rethink This, letsrethinkthis.com. And what they are is a public benefit corporation that's looking to rethink and fix the world's problems. They love this show. Rethinking Heroes. Good. They love the audience. They love Greg Palast, and they want to support this. They're putting in a $250 matching donation. So now we have even more cash on the table. People are rolling in. The lines are lit. Why? Because you've picked up the phone.
Thank you.
Calling 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Look at those lines, Greg.
I'd like to. Can we thank Jan in Hollywood and Larry in North Hollywood? And can I have one of my homies from Pacoima? I know that most people in Pacoima don't have a lot of extra change. So if instead of donating 100, please make it 200, because we, those of us in the East Valley, really need KPFK. In fact, it was, are you ready for this? 55 years ago this June that I first became a member of KPFK. It was when you're talking about Lyndon Johnson and the war in Vietnam in 1967, June 23rd. That's the day I joined KPFK, because that was the day that Lyndon Johnson came to town. And the LA police ran riot. And instead, the LA Times reported, peace demonstration turns violent. But in fact, it was the cops that went berserk, and only KPFK reported that. They had reporters right on the scene who themselves are getting hit with the nightsticks and playing the tapes of the mayhem over in phone booths. Remember phone booths?
Yes.
From the reel-to-reel tape recorders. And I said, I was just a kid, but I said, wow, I gotta join this. And I did. So 53 years ago, and believe me, I didn't have no money. Like I said, I was in Pacoima. So, but it was that important. And it's even more important now, even more, because at least then the mainstream media, people like Walter Cronkite, et cetera, were beginning to report on the war. This was, when you think of Seymour Hersh, who uncovered the My Lai massacre. Well, he was fired by the New York Times, but you hear him on Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! With me. So make that call right now.
Thank you so much, Greg Palast. Speaking of Seymour Hersh, he has written extensively about this subject that you're going to be hearing shortly from CIA analyst, 27-year CIA analyst.
Ray McGovern.
I like that. I'm looking at
Ray McGovern.
Yes, thank you, Ray McGovern. Well, when I think of McGovern, I think of the other McGovern, and then I get squeamish in Alabama. But that's not the one we're thinking of right now. We're now going to continue our truthing and the bravery and the superheroes here on Rethinking Heroes. 27-year CIA analyst Ray McGovern, a specialist on Russia now. McGovern was a CIA analyst for 27 years, from April 1963 to August 1990, serving 7 U.S. presidents. His CIA career began under President John F. Kennedy, lasted through the presidency of George H.W. Bush. McGovern advised Henry Kissinger during the Richard Nixon administration. And during the Ronald Reagan administration, he chaired national intelligence estimates and prepared the president's daily brief. At his retirement in 1990, McGovern received the CIA's Intelligence Commendation Medal and then returned the medal in protest in 2006 over CIA use of torture. This is what it means to be a patriot. This is what it means to have morality in the CIA and forcing the government to be responsive to you and me, the taxpayers. 3 years earlier, he co-founded Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, or VIPs. Gotta love that. And he's currently teaching a course on the morality of whistleblowing. So while you're listening, pick up the phone and call KPFK at 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735.
Rethinking Heroes.
The problem is this. It ain't what people know. It's what people know that ain't so. That's the problem. Now,
I'm just going to pause you for a second here because I want to reintroduce this being radio. People come and go, as Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz would say, so quickly here. Or maybe that was the wizard. Either way, we're talking right now to retired CIA analyst Ray McGovern, specialist on Russia, and was all part of the presidential briefings for many years in the White House. And, a Jack Ryan, a real Jack Ryan. And it's important to point out that not everyone is corrupt. Not everyone has a black heart, and you're not picked to get these jobs because you have a black heart. We just tend to hear about the black hearts. Then there's the white hearts. There's the good guys that put their neck out on behalf of you and me and change world history and stop the bad stuff from happening. And that's why we have Ray McGovern here. We're talking about the ethics of being a whistleblower. And now we're going to learn a little bit about Ukraine, because guess what? If you're just watching CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, you couldn't actually say why it's happening. But we're going to find out right now, Ray McGovern, at least from your perspective as a former CIA analyst and a guy right in the heart and soul, the beating heart of what we call the White House, which is a place we still kind of respect.
Well, Cary, they don't let me in the White House anymore for obvious reasons. But I used to hang out there for 4 years, actually, from 81 to 85. So I know how the system works. Now, with respect to Ukraine, the U.S. media has, now I use the word advisedly, has brainwashed the American people, okay? Let me do a real short review of history. After the Berlin Wall fell, George H.W. Bush did the right thing. He called up Gorbachev and he said, look, I'm not going to dance on what's left of the Berlin Wall. We're not going to take advantage of this. We're going to get together and figure out how we reorder the security system in Europe. He sent his Secretary of State over there, James Baker, and Baker said, okay, here we do it. This is February 10th, 1990, okay? He says, look, we would like a reunified Germany. Now, that rumor was going about at the time. And when McGovern heard reunified Germany, he...
and that's he, third person, you.
Yeah, it started shaking. Why? Well, I was alive during World War II. Real small, but I was alive. Maybe I watched too many World War II movies. I learned professionally that the whole reason for NATO was to keep the Russians out, to keep the Americans in, and keep the Germans down, keep them divided.
Yeah.
So I was scared out of my... Well, now, I come from a country that's protected by two oceans that lost, 440,000 troops in World War II. That's a lot. The Russians lost 26 million people, million with an M, okay? So here's Gorbachev, one of those Russian people, and he's saying, you want to reunite Germany, right? Oh, okay, that's a big quid. That's a tough pill to swallow. What's the quo, What's the quo, pro quo? So Baker, pretty fancy lawyer from Texas, right? He says, well, how would it be if we promise, cross our hearts and hope to die, not to move NATO 1 inch east toward you all? How would that be? Well, long story short, they bought it. Okay. Cross your heart, hope to die. Yes, James Baker. Came back the next, Shevardnadze, the foreign minister, Gorbachev. Okay, all right, you promise, right? Okay, you promise. Now, James Baker was a fancy lawyer, right? What do you do when you get an agreement like that? You write it down.
But it was done in pub. It was not written down, but it was done in public on a public stage on TV cameras, which makes it real, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, actually, this particular promise wasn't recorded in public, but it's been recorded several times on the basis of memoirs and documentary evidence since. What Baker knew is that if the U.S. didn't write it down, maybe the Russians were so in need of U.S. economic assistance, maybe they really trusted us. Okay. Last thing I'll say about this is this. I talked to one of Gorbachev's assistants who was there at the table when this went on in February 1990, okay? His name is Kuvaldin. And I said, why wasn't it written down? He looked at me and he said, Well, the Warsaw Pact still existed. The Germans hadn't had complete buy-in, but the real reason, Mr. McGovern, is we trusted you. Well, that is what's gone up in flames. Suffice it to say, NATO at that time was about 14 countries. Now it's 30 countries. And where are those countries? They're all more than 1 inch to the east of the East German border. So that was the first promise. Just fast forward to the coup in Kiev that we supervised, that we mounted, and that's on tape. Our Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs, Victoria Nuland, talking to our ambassador in Kiev, saying, these are the guys we're going to put in place after the coup, and Joe Biden is going to come in to solidify this thing if we need him. Okay? It's on tape. That was 2.5 weeks before the coup. I thought the coup would never happen because when you blow a coup, you don't do it, right? They did it. Putin, where was he? He was in Sochi at the Winter Olympics. I guess he thought the same as I did. The coup had blown. He didn't come back till the next day. Now, the critical point here is Crimea. There's not one scintilla of evidence that Putin or any other Russian leader that had ever entered their mind to seize Crimea before the coup on the 22nd of February 2014. Why did they have a plebiscite and then annex Crimea? Because it's their own all-weather, all-year-round naval base that they've had since Catherine the Great, for God's sake. If anybody thought that Putin would allow NATO come in and take that naval base, well, I think they did know. And the rest is history, because the Russians have felt compelled to reply to various things that NATO and the U.S. have done more recently. And I guess before I finish this little chronology, I would point out that there are missile base emplacements now in Romania and in Poland. They are operational, okay? Right near the Russian border. Okay?
And we're talking our missiles, by the way.
Yeah,
that's
our
the key
missiles,
distinction
US,
here.
yeah.
Not theirs, our missiles.
Correct, yeah. And, Putin has made it very explicit. This is what worries him strategically, because into those missile holes, ostensibly for anti-ballistic missiles, can go hypersonic missiles, can go cruise missiles, which put Moscow, if it's cruise missiles, 7 to 10 minutes warning Putin would have. If it's hypersonic, 5 minutes. Now, Putin doesn't want to be in a position having to decide whether to destroy the rest of the world in 5 minutes or even 10 minutes, okay? I think that's reasonable. It's comparable to the threat that John Kennedy felt, that I was on active duty with the Army at the time. I know it real well. I was at Fort Benning when he felt that the Cuban Missile Crisis, because the range of these missiles are the same as the range from Cuba, 90 miles offshore, which could hit Washington or Omaha, Nebraska, where SAC is, in minutes. So, people don't know that from the mainstream media. The New York Times never publishes that kind of thing. But if you put Putin in an analogous place to John Kennedy, you're in Putin's pocket. You're crazy, huh? So that's how bad it is. The U.S. people have been brainwashed. That's why I greet every opportunity to come on a show like yours, Cary, with great enthusiasm, because some people will be listening, and maybe some people will be challenging the U.S. media and say, look, can you give us the real story? We're brainwashed, and Will Rogers was exactly right. What we think we know ain't so.
Thank you for that excellent analysis, Ray McGovern. You're a former CIA analyst, specialist on Russia, specialist on really geopolitical events. You were part of the president's daily brief in the White House physically for 4 years and started Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, or VIPs, before the Iraq War to warn the president that the intelligence had been cooked. And since then, you've been ringing the bell. And I think it's tough sometimes for people to hear that how the chessboard is actually laid out, because then suddenly we feel like maybe we're unpatriotic if even for a second we doubt. Yet we had a president in a previous administration telling us doubt everything. Doubt there's air, doubt there's mosquitoes, COVID, whatever. It's all fake. All of it. Everything is fake. And people drank that in voluped gulps, in increments of swimming pools, that everything was trash if it came out of the newspapers, TV, or the government itself. But we're sort of back into this mythological belief system again, which is why it's brave to get the truth. And the fact that you're a real Jack Ryan, who was in the CIA in the White House telling us how it really works, what the deals were. This is the only education most people will ever get in their lifetime about how we got to where we are today, is what you've just said in the last 10 minutes.
Well, Cary, with all due respect to Jack Ryan,
who doesn't exist, but the actor's great.
Right, I know. There are two CIAs. One is the Jack Ryan CIA that blows up things and overthrows governments and so forth. The other is the analysis unit that Truman really set up CIA to do, where he could look to one institution to tell him like it is, okay? And that's what I did with respect to the Soviet Union. Well, from 63 to I left in 1990. Now, that's really important because right now, the other CIA is blowing up things like the Nord Stream pipeline. And the place where I worked, according to Seymour Hersh, who has this story, had said, well, wait a second, this sounds really stupid. Have you thought about what happens next? Well, they're going to find out. So this part of the CIA is never listened to because this part of the CIA, Jack Ryan, gets all the money, gets all the attention, gets all the influence over the director, who is really just a factotum, a kind of what's a word? Just a part of the system. You don't get a director with any guts if you take him from the State Department.
He's the Godfather, isn't he?
Yeah, he's kind of like, well, he doesn't have the influence of a Godfather. This part of the CIA is running him. They say, well, let's do this. We got all this money, and the president seems to approve it. And the Pentagon really likes it. And so he says, sure, let's do it. Go ahead. Well, he knows better. He knows because in 2008, he was told by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Bill Burns, head of the CIA now, was our ambassador in Russia. And when Lavrov told him, and this is in Bill Burns's cable from Moscow, which we have courtesy of WikiLeaks, he told Burns, look, this is a red line. You talk about allowing Ukraine into NATO, we will have to respond. There'll be civil war, and we will have to decide whether or not we have to intervene. Those are Lavrov's words. He's still foreign minister. Look him up. It's right in the public domain now, that cable. And if I've seen one cable from Moscow, I've probably seen about 4,000 or so.
Well put in a succinct nutshell. Thank you so much, Ray McGovern, retired CIA analyst. In another conversation, I'd like to hear about what the optics are for the Germans to start rolling tanks for the first time since World War II, tanks that would go toward Russia. That is a giant observation, seeing as you pointed out, you were a little boy during World War II, and the reunification of Germany and having it sell weapons, tanks, and Luftwaffe airplanes. It does mean a lot to the around Earth, and people do react to it a certain way, but it is simply not discussed in a way where we can understand it. Ray McGovern, specialist on Russia, started veteran intelligence professionals for sanity, or VIPs, and his job is to whistleblow on behalf of the truth that the CIA brings and show that there are good people in our own U.S. government. Cary Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes. You can always learn more at rethinkingheroes.com. You can donate and support KPFK for having the guts to put veterans on, to do the right thing, no matter what, no matter the pain, by calling 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. And if you make that $100 donation, which is also now being matched by a $250 pledge by Let's Rethink This, letsrethinkthis.com, looking to change the world and rethink all of the world's problems, well, KPFK wins and continues to do the good work work in a cloud of mainstream entertainment through which the cloud can never be pierced. Well, we are that javelin that is piercing that cloud, the lone javelin. And think of Los Angeles, our signal, our podcasts, every show, this show, Rethinking Heroes, when it's rendered into a podcast, ends up ubiquitously on Apple, on iTunes, on Spotify, right next to everyone else, and everyone gets to hear it. So your donation becomes a legacy donation that informs and enlightens so many. Let's go back to Greg Palast here, standing right next to me, more or less. And Greg, electronically, because we do safe broadcasting here. We're talking about your film Vigilante, which is not only narrated by the great Rosario Dawson. You've got Academy Award. I guess that's the beauty of living in Hollywood. Academy Award-winning producers. You've got the DiCaprio family backing this and producing it. You've got all stars like Martin Sheen, one of the greatest presidents who ever lived. And this movie is being made available here and only here well before its public release through special dispensation for people who call right now and donate $100 to KPFK at 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. And we have another clip to play, don't we?
Let me tee this up for you. So the film Vigilante, Georgia's Vote Suppression Hitman, which is, again, available only by contacting KPFK, kpfk.org, or 818-985-5735. And in this film, and what we're about to see is one of these vigilantes. This is GOP operative. This woman, if you see when you see the film, what you'll see is a woman dressed like Nancy Reagan with the high heels and the red dress and the blonde bouffant and all that. And she's in this antebellum house. And we walk in and there's ammo stacked up all over the place. She's got an automatic weapon, a modified, if you see the film while this is going on, she's got a modified Russian assault rifle.
These are real people, by the way.
Next to the door. She's not just a real person. At the time, she was running for vice chair of the Republican Party of Georgia, and she is one of the key people in the Marjorie Taylor Greene operation. You know, the right-wing Republican congresswoman from Georgia. And so this nicely dressed woman, I go in, and one thing I won't play that's in the film a little bit more is by the end of it, she's using language that would get us pulled off the air, because this woman personally challenged 32,000 voters' right to vote in Georgia. 32,000. She didn't know any of them. We called 800 of them and found out that these 800 people on her list of 32,000, we figured that's enough. Not one was an illegal voter, but interestingly, quite Democratic, quite black.
Oh, so they were voting the wrong way.
They were voting. They were basically voting while black, which in Georgia is nearly a crime. So she challenged 32,000 people. So I went to her house, and on camera, I challenged her, and this is what happened.
You didn't call him, but you challenged his right to vote or have his ballot challenged.
Get out of my house.
Okay,
Get out of my house now. I can't go through 32,000 people. I was handed the list.
You can't go through 32,000.
Through the vote, vetted these.
Have you ever heard of the Ku Klux Klan law? Have you heard of the Ku Klux Klan law of 1871?
I'm from Canada.
So you don't know the Ku Klux Klan law?
I'm from Canada.
Clearly you don't know Georgia law. Ku Klux Klan law of 1871.
Get out.
Do you believe this woman shouldn't have her vote counted?
That has nothing to do with it.
Is this an attempt to remove a lot of Democrats, black people from voting to win the election?
I am far from that, sir. And you have crossed the line. You have crossed the line. Get out of my house now.
I shall get out of your house
before
now.
I throw you.
And you are sure that this is your legal voting address?
And that's when the unbroadcastable segment began, but at least we didn't get a bullet. So I'm laughing, but that's the other thing is that Major Turner, who you'll see returns in the film, and he shows up when the vigilante's there, and he was really nervous. And about these guys these guys are armed. To do this work, we had to go do undercover work at in the Trump operation. You heard the term True the Vote. That's that right-wing group that came up with that crazy film 2,000 Mules. We take that apart. It's very funny, unless you're an American voter. I suppose it's not. It's funny only in the way it's so funny it hurts.
Let's reset Greg Palast, Major Turner, who we heard earlier, and we're talking about military guys. We're talking about a guy who's so talented and such an honorable guy, happens to be African American, but hired and sent to California to help the people of Ukraine and help develop weapons and do all of this good high-level stuff. And he is one of 800,000 plus that lost his ability to vote. So this is happening to military people on top who are supposed to be protected when they travel. They're supposed to, no matter what, be able to vote through absentee ballots, but that protection is gone too.
Yes, you can take a bullet, but you can't take a ballot if you're black. According to these characters. Now, understand, this is not just individual odd cases. This is literally tens of thousands of soldiers who are being challenged. This is their new trick. And you'll see other things in that film, too, about our voting system. And also, you'll get some real story. You know, right now, there's this whole war created by Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, who, again, the Wall Street Journal wants to be your president. Learn about him. A guy named Rick DeSantis, who is the governor of Florida, who's basically making it a crime to tell the truth about history. They talk about critical race theory. This is not a theory. We really did have slavery in the United States. There's nothing theoretical. There's nothing critical about it. It's a fact. It's history. But they don't want to teach this. And you know why? You'll find out in the film. Brian Kemp's real secret. Because no one knows who's Brian Kemp. What's Kemp? No. His family's original name was Habersham. They were the very first people to bring Africans in chains to Georgia. You know, most people don't realize that Georgia is one of the few places in the Americas where slavery was against the law. Believe it or not, Georgia, which at that time was the entire Deep South. You have to understand, Georgia originally was the whole South. And you couldn't have enslaved labor. But then the Kemp family, his ancestors, had a deal with the King of England, who he literally had to then fight with bullets later. He cut a deal to allow him to bring in Africans in chains to work his plantations. That's the source of the wealth of the Kemp family. That's their money. I talked to the governor's cousin who says, why doesn't he admit where our family became wealthy and powerful? It was off the backs of Africans who were beaten, who were whipped. By the way, the Kemp family was known, his ancestors were known as the most internationally infamous as cruel slave drivers. There's a big, actually an international bestseller about Kemp's ancestors and their cruelty to Africans. This is what the governor wants to cut off. And this is what you need to see. You have to know this story. So go to 818-985-5735. This is Greg Palast saying, make that $100 minimum donation. 818-985-KPFK or KPFK.org. This is your moment to get, I'm telling you, you won't regret it. You won't regret it. This is enjoyable. It's like Jamie Foxx who saw it said, this is amazing. This film is so important, but it's so entertaining because it's a real movie. It's a real popcorn chewer. 818-985-5735. You can't get it anywhere else. This is Greg Palast saying, you want to know, you've heard my reports on Democracy Now! And Flashpoints and, of course, Thom Hartmann. And Tom, by the way, Thom Hartmann, this film would not have happened if it weren't for Thom Hartmann kind of introducing me to people like the DiCaprio family and others. He wants this story out. If you believe in Hartmann, keep him on the air. Give me the platform so that Hartmann can put me on the air and he can put on the amazing people he does. Do you want Thom Hartmann's program? Well, it ain't free. You know that Thom Hartmann donates his program? He does not charge the station for his program. He charges commercial stations a ton for his program. He donates to KPFK. I donate to KPFK. I'm donating the films. I'm donating my time. So is Cary. Call 818-985-KPFK. Do it now. Do it now.
Well said. And of course, Tom is supporting Rethinking Heroes. That's why we're all sharing this week-long slot. You can hear him Monday through Thursday because all this various information needs to get out. And of course, Greg, you can hear on Hartman's show Monday through Thursday here and there. We're all doing this together because we want all the elements of information to be out free and available to everyone. You can get more on this donation for Greg Palast simply by going to kpfk.org. You can see more about Vigilante, but we want you to pick up the phone right here, right now, because this film, as Greg Palast pointed out earlier, is only available right here, right now. It is not on Amazon. It is not on Netflix. It is not on Prime. It is not on Paramount Plus. We could go on forever. How many streaming services now? Thousands, and new ones to come. 0 of them have it. 0. Right now, your favorite radio station is the only place on earth where you can get Vigilante, the film, for $100 pledge. It is your school. It is when you watched, what was the show with Kevin Spacey that was famous so many years ago that should have been mandatory viewing in all schools before he got busted? You know that one. Whatever that was. It was so great. It ought to be mandatory viewing in school along with Handmaid's Tale, if you really want to understand how stuff really works. Well, in his film, we see how the military is affected. We see how civilians are affected. We see how African Americans are affected. We see how if you're a live human and you check a box called other, how you're affected. Even if you don't check the box, guess what? You're affected. And that's the whole plot of the play here. This level of education, this kind of freedom of speech does not exist anywhere. We are it. And it has come down to that in the world. Let's Rethink This has just thrown in a $250 matching pledge. So when you buy the DVD right now and you donate to KPFK and you get Greg Palast DVD, the matching pledge kicks in and KPFK is able to keep all of this programming on the air. Continue to break the rules and put these voices on. So pick up the phone right now as the lines are lighting up. Look at those. After that clip, Greg Palast.
Thanks to Eric in Northridge.
Thanks so much to that. And thanks, by the way, to all the people in Hollywood. You mentioned Greg Palast, mentioning Jamie Foxx. These are just the social circle of people who happen to like what happens at KPFK. You'd be afraid when you walk down the halls. Oh, look, it's Lily Tomlin. I mean, this has always been, I have so many selfies with the coolest people on the planet that I could never, through their agents or on a red carpet in my other life, ever be able to approach like that. But here we throw our feet up on the table and have some bad coffee in a styrofoam cup. 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Pick up that phone. Join the blinking lights, the Christmas tree, the Hanukkah bush that's glowing, glistening right now as people call in and support KPFK at 818-985-5735. $100 pledge. That's it. A legacy, a DVD that breaks down the entire function of modern government in 2023, 2024. You don't even have to explain it to your kids. Show them the movie Vigilante. Let them see for themselves. Let your friends see with their own eyeballs, their own bloodshot eyeballs, what's really happening behind the scenes as you pick up the phone, 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, or make a secure donation right now at kpfk.org. Cary Harrison here. This is Rethinking Heroes, and we are part of the whole Tom Hartman chain. We're part of the Greg Palast chain. You hear him afternoons on Dennis Bernstein at 5 p.m. You hear him on Democracy Now! You hear him Monday through Thursday on Tom Hartman. We are all part of the same family doing the work here and getting as many angles of a story and as many of the people that are affected by the stories out and giving them voice, giving voice to the voiceless. And Greg Palast's particular talent, other than being a brilliant writer, is a brilliant filmmaker. Not to mention his 74 other talents, which someday, if you get to know him socially,
we'll keep that. We'll keep that private.
Be a little overwhelmed.
But okay, guys, you just heard where you can hear me, and they all have one thing in common: it's broadcast on KPFK on your Pacifica network. Where you don't hear me, gee, I don't get it, Cary. I used to be a regular on Fox and on CNN. I said, but I'm not regular there anymore. I'm regular in only one place, because the place that won't censor me or tell me what to say or what not to say. And so I just want to let you know, this is your moment to get my film, Vigilante, which is, by the way, again, it wouldn't have happened without Tom Hartman. It's Rosario Dawson's narration, produced by Martin Sheen and some fantastic people. Go make that call, 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, or go to kpfk.org. If you make the call, say hi to Terry for me. These people are doing a tremendous job against the odds, against what they don't want you to hear. Okay, this is what's important. You're not going to get this information anywhere else, and you know it. And you know what? You don't miss your water till your well runs dry. Don't take it for granted. It's a very concerning situation right now. I don't want the station to have to downgrade its antenna or any of those things to save money. What we want is we want to expand. We want to reach out and tell the truth on them. Thank you, Cary Harrison.
Only here on KPFK. Cary Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Greg Palast, let's say goodbye and remind people why they need to get Vigilante, which is everything you ever needed to know about current government on a DVD before it's publicly released and at a good value for a $100 donation to KPFK right now.
I'm telling you how they steal elections, so stop the thievery before it starts. You're only going to hear it on KPFK, and you're only going to get the film Vigilante because it's not in release yet. Only copies made for Pacifica by calling 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, or go to kpfk.org. I'll donate to this. You donate your funds, and let's tell the truth on them. KPFK, your weapon of mass instruction in the Southland.
All right. Thank you so much, Greg Palast. Matching pledge, $250 from Let's Rethink This. Also looking to change and educate and fix all the problems you and I know. As Greg Palast just said, Cary Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Call KPFK and support it right now, 818-985-5735, $100 pledge, and you get everything you ever wanted to know in perpetuity, an education that can never be taken away from you. 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Let me thank you, Greg Palast. Let me thank KPFK. Let me thank Pacifica, the entire network, and you, most importantly, the listener. Without you, there is no radio signal. Without you, there is no mission. Without you, there is no completing that mission. And also, I want to thank the tens of thousands of veterans listening. For the first time ever, you've had a voice in public, on public radio. And let's thank Tom Hartman for that. This is his co-participation. This is his making sure your voice gets heard by sharing this weekly slot, making sure that we get out all different forms of history, co-creating all the different avenues where different voices can be heard. I want to thank everyone once again. We do appreciate it. KPFK appreciates it. And most importantly, radio on this week, which happens to be National Radio Day, coast to coast, showing the importance of this signal, what we all do together. Finally, for a $100 donation, just reminding you, call 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Get a copy of Vigilante. Get a copy of this radio station impressed upon your heart forever. 818-985-KPFK.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. Life after the military. RethinkingHeroes.com.
90.7 KPFK, Los Angeles.